Well, well, well. What can be said about Bianca Sensori that hasn't already been said?
We're looking at the latest outfit she wore out to a low-key lunch. I don't know how low-key it was. The pair, she and her husband Kanye West, arrived in a $100,000 Tesla Cybertruck, parked outside a small restaurant in LA. She is wearing what looks like a pair of holding-in underpants, would you agree?
Yeah.
Flesh-coloured. And a tiny bikini top, the triangle of which covers the nipple, and that's all. So under, over, sides are all exposed of her breasts.
Yeah, you seem to be outraged about this.
I'm not outraged. I'm perplexed as to why, as a society, that's okay. Meaning, are you allowed to dress like that in public? Don't we have public nudity clauses?
No, I'm pretty sure.
Can you sit at a restaurant like that?
I think it's up to if you're in a restaurant, it's a public space, but at the same time, the restaurateur could say, no, we don't want that. You can't be dressed like that in here.
Well, remember when they went to Italy, I think that there was some indecent exposure issues and they weren't encouraged to go back there. I wonder what it's like. This is not the first time she's dressed pretty much naked going into public places. As a mother of sons, how are men supposed to react to this? If you sat next to her in a restaurant and you were with your sons, say your 22-year-old son, what do you think he would do?
Well, I would imagine he would be looking up in the air a bit.
Yeah, it makes everyone uncomfortable.
Of course it does.
But if men look at it, they're pervs, but how do they not look at it? It puts everyone in a very uncomfortable position. I want to know what you think the psychology of Kanye West is, because her family is saying that they think that there's coercion here. A lot of people are saying this.
Well, she's considerably younger than him, and he's got a bit of a cultish leadership. He's got a Svengali approach to her.
I know. She's an architect. Has anyone ever, what's her work?
Yeah, what has she built?
This has overtaken everything.
I haven't seen any of her work.
And maybe in our modern world, that's okay. You can be Barbie tells us you can dress like that and be an astronaut.
Yep.
But I find this very confronting. And her father apparently has said he wants to sit down with Kanye to discuss his daughter's her wardrobe, that he might be influencing her choices. How does he respond when men look at her? Do you think he'd like it?
Yeah, of course he does.
Really?
Yes, of course he does. He's part of that.
If a guy went, I'd like to tap that, he'd go, good on you, mate. That's what we're aiming for.
That's what
do you think he'd like that?
Yeah, it's like if you've got she is nothing more than a possession to him. So it would be like if he had a great car or a great motorbike. Oh, I want to ride that. Good on you, mate. You don't necessarily let someone ride it, but you certainly let them appreciate it. That's what happens.
We've spoken about this before, where I've been in places where you say to someone, your wife is smoking hot. And I'm taken aback.
You've gone straight to the chase on this one. We might be talking about someone else. You've got a good-looking wife. And it's
you said your wife is smoking hot.
Said. And that was after a little bit of.
Yeah, of course.
But it wasn't like I just came up to someone I didn't know and said, your wife is smoking hot.
No, but if you hear that about your wife, is that a nice thing to hear?
Of course it is.
You want people to think that, but how do you feel when people say it to you?
I have no beef with that. I like that when someone gives me a
compliment. Because do you feel she's a possession?
I guess maybe that's part of it.
An extension of you.
Yeah, it's an extension of you. It's people have said to me about you, they said, that Amanda, she's a good-looking woman.
But I'm
How
not.
do you control the urges? And I said, well, she is a good-looking woman. And then I take that on board. I'm quite proud of that fact. If they said, that Amanda Cullen, what a bush pig, then I would be upset with that.
It's so complex, isn't it?
Not really.
But how would you feel if your wife dressed like this?
Oh, look, that's a different kettle of fish. I wouldn't condone that.
She's wearing a kettle of fish.
I wouldn't condone her to do that. I remember.
Or your daughter.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that if Romany started dressing like that, I'd be following her around with a beach towel.
Yeah, because you don't want men looking at her.
No, with a daughter. I remember one time Romany and I were walking on the road and a guy whistled out at her and I went, oh my God. And Romany said to me, Dad, it happens all the time. And I sort of thought, well, and it's quite interesting you say that because that's quite different to your daughter as to your partner.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. I will say this, years ago, back in my rock and roll DJ days, I hosted a Miss Summertime bikini pageant and I was the MC.
Someone had to, Brendan.
And I ended up going on tour with these girls around all these pubs and the idea of the bikini pageant was they would these girls all they'd get up on stage and they'd talk about themselves, and then there'd be the evening dress, and there'd be the culminating in the bikini part. But these girls were more worried about the questions I would ask them on stage as opposed to standing there near naked.
Really?
But all their boyfriends, which largely seemed to be large Lebanese kickboxers and bikies, all they were interested in was how hot I thought that their girls were. And there was one particular guy.
Wow, so they weren't threatened by it?
Not at all. There was one particular guy, and I really took a shine to these girls. They were quite lovely. They're all, you wouldn't say the sharpest tools in the shed, but at the same time, there was one lady, and she was just great. And she had these, just got a boob job done. And a boyfriend says to me, "What do you think of Patty's tits?" And I went, he goes, "Have a look." And she takes her top off. So she's standing there. Then he gets my hand and says, "Have a feel. They feel real." So this guy who was the kickboxing champion of the Southern Hemisphere.
Wow.
I'm sitting there. He's got both my hands on his girlfriend's bosoms. And I'm going, well, they feel, there was nothing I could do about it. It was beyond my control. And he said, "Don't they feel real?" And I went, "Yes, of course they feel real." It's exactly the same as if he had a car and said, "Sit in the seat. What do you think?"
Wow.
And that's where and that's exactly what Kanye's doing. That's exactly what he's doing.
Sit in my car and see what you think.
Exactly. Put the seats back and go for a cruise.
Seat warmers are on.
Okay, that's it for today. Come back tomorrow for more Jonesy and Amanda's cutting room floor.